So why do I think handling is more important than power? Now, before you get your panties in a bunch, power is definitely a goal for this car. But handling at the moment is more important. Now, as a naturally aspirated 2JZ, it is incredibly slow, and I'm sure all of you are aware that it is a very slow engine. It doesn't make much power. In comparison to the turbo variant, this is like the younger, obese brother that needs a lot of work to become to his full potential. And yes, that is a stick that holds my bonnet up. The gas struts are old and have never been replaced, and I can't be bothered to replace it at this stage. None of those things sound good, and I agree, absolutely. I'm definitely looking at going for power, but not right now. There's plenty of other things that need to be sorted out first before power can be introduced. Now, given this is a very slow car, you would expect that I would be chasing power as one of the very first things for the car, considering that it can't break traction, it's naturally aspirated, and it's automatic, and is very heavy. Now, I will admit, I did spiral a bit when it came to the suspension parts. I probably didn't need to spend as much as I did, but in the end, I can't complain, and it was worth it. Now, just to clarify, this is a Lexus GS300 from 1998. It's not a Toyota Aristo, unfortunately. So this brings us to the question of, well, what suspension work have I done to the car? Well, let me show you. Now, I just want to clarify, I'm including brakes in with the handling. So all braking components, including lines and handbrake shoes, I consider all that as part of handling. So with that being said, what you're looking at here are Project Mu rear brake rotors, Project Mu pads, and then I also have some Project Mu lines that are still yet to be fitted. And then I, in the future, will then also be setting this up to be a dual caliper setup with for hydro handbrake. Now, this does have handbrake shoes for your parking brake, but they will end up getting deleted and thrown out when this goes dual caliper. For the front, I'm upgrading the stock caliper, which is just sitting right here, to an LS460. Now, obviously the brake disc is removed, but because the factory disc is too small to be able to fit with the LS460 calipers, I had to test fit the caliper so I could then measure the distance needed so I can then work out the diameter for the new disc that I need to order in. So why are brakes so important to upgrade for me? Well, because I intend on making this car a track car in the future, the last thing that I want to happen is a brake failure. And so for me, the factory brakes are suitable for street use, but definitely not suitable for track use. They are just too unresponsive and don't have enough bite. It takes too long for them to be able to stop the car and just don't have the performance that you need to be able to handle the car appropriately. Now, the factory calipers and brakes are suitable still now just to be able to handle the performance that it's currently at. But since the car is already currently going under a full makeover and upgrade, it was worthwhile upgrading the brakes at the same time. And also, since the brakes were almost at the point where I was going to have to replace them anyway, I'm better off just upgrading it now without having to buy brakes again. Now, by upgrading your brakes, you'll get an improved heat management, responsiveness, and reliability. Now, this is important for before you start going for power, because when you start increasing your power, then you're going to increase the amount of demand that's required on your braking system. And so for me, I want to make sure that everything in the car is set up to be able to handle the power before I start pushing it. Now, moving on to coilovers, I've currently got HKS Hypermax for front and rear in this car. Now, coilovers tends to be a pretty common thing that you would upgrade before you go for power anyway. And for the standard car, that's completely fine. Now, I imported these directly out of Japan. They've been really good and they're reliable, but to be fair, I haven't been able to drive on them all that much because the car has just been sitting on the hoist needing repairs for many months now. Now, upgraded coilovers always makes a big difference, especially if you've got like an old 25-year-old car. It's worth money. The factory suspension and coilovers that are in your old cars will most likely, if it hasn't been replaced, have sagged and become worn out, and so they become very soft and are not very responsive for the type of driving that at least I want to do. And so with old suspension, it ends up making the car feel very floaty and unpredictable, and unpredictability in a car is dangerous. For example, like you could be driving around a corner and as you enter, you'll enter at a certain angle and feel a bit of a weight shift. And then as you continue going around it, then you feel the whole car sort of turn and shift its whole weight with it, and can feel like the back end then sort of kicks out a little bit. This is part of the issue of having very soft suspension and outdated suspension. With upgraded suspension and coilovers, it removes that error and allows you to tune it, adjust it to suit your driving style. This also ties in with your control arms that you have in your car. So some of your control arms will most likely have some form of adjustments to allow for camber and tow. Now, what I've done in this car is I've replaced all of the control arms in the rear. And so if you want to know what the brand is, they're all Serial 9. Now, upper control arms and rear lower control arms will generally adjust your camber. Toe arms will adjust how much toe is in your wheel. And then your traction rod arms will adjust where your wheel sits in line with your wheel guard. Now, I'm not going to go into much detail about it because I'm terrible at explaining it. The reason why it's important to have your suspension set up properly before you start going for power is because as you start increasing power, you're then going to put more load in your suspension, and will also cause for your car to adjust the way it moves. If your suspension is already a bit shitty and can't handle the power as effectively, is then going to amplify any of your mistakes much more. You able to have your suspension set up properly and understanding how to adjust it properly, you're going to have a much easier time driving because you can then adjust all your car to be more predictable for you and more enjoyable for you. Now, the reason why I want to get my suspension set up before I go for power is because I want to understand how my car's going to handle while it's still slow, and so if I make a mistake, the effect of that mistake is going to be much less significant than if I'm putting 500 horsepower through the driveline. And so I'm less likely to bend it into a wall or go flying off the track and destroy the whole underbody, rather than just say like spinning out. Now, you might be wondering, when I do start going for power, what is my power goal for the car? And the simple answer is I'm aiming to keep the power low and then increase power. So initially, our current plan is to make this only make about 350 horsepower at the wheels. That'll be enough for it to just break traction and get used to the car. And then once I get competent at that skill level and that power range, then I'll start bumping up the power and then keep building my skill as the power increases. One thing I don't want to do is just throw everything at it and then just jump straight to 500 horsepower, because I know that if I have that much power, then I know I am most likely going to crash it, and I want to avoid crashing it as much as possible. Realistically, crashing a car is going to be kind of inevitable, or at least like sort of damaging it. But if I can avoid the beginner mistakes and just try and learn things at my skill level, then that should help remove as many mistakes. It's like giving a kid a dirt bike and he's never ridden a dirt bike before. You give him a 50cc little pit bike and then he's ridden that for a month. And then from there you're like, oh, okay, so because you can now sort of ride a bike, just give him a 450 enduro bike and then be like, oh yeah, you'll be fine, just have at it. Like we know that's going to be a disaster. Now obviously this is all my perspective and my thought pattern for how I'm building my car. You can have your own, obviously you are your own individual, you can have your own complete take on it and you can build your own car exactly how you want it. Doesn't worry me at all. This is my thought pattern and how I want to approach building my car. Now if you do have a difference of opinion, please let me know. Like I want to hear why you chose how you built your car. And if you also agree with me, let me know why you agree. Let me know what you think, and that's going to be it for today, and I'll see you in the next one.